Good morning. So today we're on our third week of our series called Confessions of a Control Freak. And when you're a control freak, the challenge isn't so much for you as for everyone around you. I know this to be true a little bit because I can find myself to be a little bit of a control freak at times too. But it isn't about me, it's about all of us. That we're all control freaks in one way or another about something. Last week we talked about letting go of our preconceptions of what being great looks like. And it turns out to Jesus, a great person is one who serves others. Today we're going to look at how many of us are control freaks about our image and how we appear to others, or how we would like to appear to others. So continuing on our theme, you know you're this kind of control freak if you've ever lied about how much weight you can really bench at the gym. You might be a control freak. Or you have to put on makeup before you go to the gym. You might be this kind of control freak. If every image you post on social media is photoshopped, you might be a control freak about your image. If you've ever embellished your kids' sports achievements, you might be a control freak. If you've ever had your family redo some part of a family party or an event so that you can capture it properly on Instagram, you might be a control freak. And if you've ever spent money you don't have on stuff you don't want to impress people you don't like, you might be a control freak about your image. So think about it for a moment. That if your kitchen is not about function, or your clothes are not about comfort, then they're likely an expression of the image you want to project. Or if you fought in the car all the way over here to church this morning and then got out and held hands walking into church, you could be a control freak about your image as family. This is a real problem that many of us have. We want to project this perfect image to the world. So for all of these things, if the disparity between our projected image and the reality grows too wide, it can become a serious source of stress and can in turn negatively impact our health and lead to isolation. That human opinion is so fleeting, it's also a trap. That the scriptures tell us the fear of what others think of you is a trap. The fear of what others think of you is a trap, that it comes from Proverbs. So how do we let go of worrying about our image? We can take a look at today's gospel that we just heard. That Jesus was passing through a town called Jericho. Jericho is one of the oldest cities in the world, and it was very wealthy back then. So Jesus and his crowd are on their way to Jerusalem, and as they pass through Jericho, they pass through the city gates, and they're greeted by a blind beggar, a common place for people who beg. There was no other way for Bartimaeus to make a living, to support himself, that he was completely dependent on the charity of others. So on hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." Son of David was a messianic title. So Bartimaeus recognized who Jesus really is. Ironic that he saw Jesus for who he was. But the crowd tried to shut him up. I'm guessing he probably wasn't the image that they wanted to project for their beautiful town. Bartimaeus there begging by the side of the road and crying out, bothering people, shouting after Jesus, was not what they envisioned for their town. They wanted him to be quiet. But think now, if Bartimaeus had cared what people thought, if he was worried about his image, he would have kept quiet. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Persistent prayer can be quite powerful because it works. What does the fickle crowd do? They flip and try now to say, "Hey, Jesus is calling you." And Jesus asks him, "What do you want me to do for you?" I'm sure the apostles were like, he's blind. What do you think he wants? Again, the irony is that even though he's physically blind, that spiritually he could see Jesus was the Master and the Messiah. So Jesus matched his physical condition with his spiritual one with these words, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." And the man is healed and becomes a disciple, a follower of Christ. So when we're control freaks about our image, we're following the crowd instead of following Jesus. And following the crowd doesn't make any sense. The crowd is fickle. The crowd doesn't really care about us, and their influence is only temporary. But how do we get started, and where do we begin? Let's try fasting, like going on a diet, but not necessarily involving food. Fast from the things that are feeding your desire to control your image. Maybe there's websites that fuel your insecurities about image and clothes. Maybe there's a crowd at school or even at work or amongst our acquaintances that we need to step back from. Maybe there's a bar that you frequent where the regulars are taking you in the wrong direction. Maybe you need to fast from Facebook or ignore Instagram. And with all the extra time you'll have on your hands, you can devote a few more minutes a day to your quiet time, in which, like blind Bartimaeus, you'll recognize more clearly the presence of the Lord in your life. And when you do, acknowledge his presence. Rely on prayer. Be persistent in prayer. And be specific in your requests. And you will, like Bartimaeus, experience his power. And when it comes to cultivating an image, play to the only audience that truly counts, the audience of one, which is God himself.